Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 4th July 2016. Now, the first article is related to the terrorism. There are a series of blasts in Baghdad, and also there is a lone wolf attack of a bakery in Bangladesh. So let us analyze why these are growing in Bangladesh and also what are the reasons in Baghdad. You know that Bangladesh has a specific reason over here. We cannot see it as a single alone event which has occurred. There are a series of events which are occurring from the past. For the last 1 year, we can see number of articles in which the secularists and minorities and atheists and also homosexuals, free bloggers, all these are being attacked in Bangladesh. And if you see the foreigners, the Kunio Hoshi from Japan and also Cesare Tavella from Italy, these are also attacked in the up and scale of the diplomatic area in the Bangladesh. So in this context, today with the bakery attack, the situation is only worsened. Now in this context, let us see the role of the government. The government has denied any presence of Islamic State on its soil, Al-Qaeda on its soil, and it considers it as an action of extremists. Now, with Islamic State announcing itself and the nature of the attacks seeing close to the Islamic State style of functioning, so there is no ambiguity that this is being undertaken through people who are inspired through the Islamic State. And next, the opposition, instead of finding its solution to fight the case, it is trying to depend more and more on religious fundamentalism, Jamaat-e-Islami and all these things. And they try to gain mileage out of this. The government, its major focus is on weakening the opposition rather than strengthening the democratic framework in the country. And the difference in these attacks is this. Most of the people who have attacked, these are not madrasa trained. They are well-educated urban middle class and upper middle class families, and they are well-to-do families too. It means the traditional notions that the terrorism is growing in madrasas is no more applied in Bangladesh. So it means the state is getting systematically weakened in Bangladesh, and it is not a very good news for India. And the next thing is, the Bangladesh has to give the space for the liberals, and this extremist fight has to be dealt with a strong message. And then, if we observe the Bangladesh, it is unlike Pakistan, it was found on secular fabric. And even today the social fabric in Bangladesh is much stronger and its secular credentials are much stronger, and Awami League stands for its secularism. So it is the time Bangladesh has to protect its social fabric. And the next is, coming to Iraq, you know that Fallujah, Mosul, these are the two cities which are under the control of the Islamic State. The Fallujah was taken up by the Iraq forces in this week, and Mosul is the only state, and then the Mosul is also, the Islamic State is about to lose. So in this context, if you see Haider al-Abadi's government, one thing, it is trying to promote Shia domination. Slowly, because of this, a Sunni alienation is also occurring in the case of the Iraq. And second thing, the corruption is too high in Iraq now. So recently, the green zone attack, if you see, where the people, they stormed into the green zone where the government functions majorly from. So this shows that there is a dissentment which is growing between the government and the people. Obviously this vacuum is filled by certain elements such as Islamic State. And the Sunni alienation is also dangerous for Iraq. So these are the things that need to be taken care of. And one more thing, the Islamic State has clearly said that so there has to be a fight against the Crusaders during this Ramzan month. So series of attacks have increased considerably. From US, if you take in Florida, there is an attack on a nightclub, and then you can see it in Bangladesh. Now you can see this in Iraq, and the series of attacks are increasing. And it is the time the government has to function closely, and they have to see terrorism is a common threat for everyone. Next is, coming to the M.K. Narayanan's article, it is about Iran-India relations. So let us see it this way. Now, can we compare India's development of Chabahar port with the China development of Gwadar port? That is what is the thing. Now, however, diplomacy is changing in the existing regime, and to what extent our Prime Minister's visit to West Asia are fruitful from the strategic dimension. And finally, whatever the goodwill diplomacy India has undertaken in Afghanistan is going to stay. Now let us see first thing. Now generally a diplomacy of India, especially in the multilateral institutions, it was performed below the radar. And the second thing is, we have always maintained the low visibility with regard to this. The major reason for the maintenance of this low visibility is to gain the consensus or unanimity is much easier in those circumstances. So, when we become highly visible, obviously people might take us as a threat. Now here I want to quote the words of Deng Xiaoping of China. Always, the Deng, what he said is, hide your strength, bide your time, and never claim leadership. So that was the China's policy, that was ingrained into the China's blood in its diplomacy. Now China has become assertive, but if you see the 1980s and 90s when it was growing, it was very, functioning below the radar. And the second thing is, if you see comparison of India against China. So Chabahar port, which India is developing in Iran, it has took a long time and India has very poor credibility with the execution of the international projects. On the other hand, the Gwadar port, it has got its own implications or else. The Iran, it is not just close to India. Iran's closeness with China is much visible. Now, Iran is also close to Pakistan for its strategic interests. Though India and Iran, cultural ties are very stronger, and India is the second largest population for Shias. In spite of this, the strategic calculations of Iran, India is nowhere fit into. Now, if you take the trade relations, the China, it has close to $52 billion of trade relations. India's is nowhere close to $9 billion. Most of them are related to the petrochemicals. After the sanctions are lifted, the China's Xi Jinping is the first to visit the Iran. And next is, most of the infrastructure projects now are undertaken by the China in Iran. And on the other hand, even when the sanctions are going on, Iran is still received its help from China. But China feels that India voted against it in IAEA, and also India did not stand for it during its sanctions. These are the things which are there. And it has moved very close to United States. This is what Iran feels about us. And Iran, Pakistan and China pipeline, it is already under the way. So previously it was supposed to be Iran, Pakistan, India pipeline. Now the discussions are going into extend it to China. And on the other hand, the Gwadar port, it is with the close ally of China, that is with Pakistan. But Iran, so it is one of the close friends of in India, or India is one among the close friends of Iran. And the next is, let us see the West Asia politics itself. You know that Saudi Arabia supports the Sunni-dominated countries and Shia is mostly for the Iran. So in this context, Saudi Arabia, the joint statement clearly states that India and these countries have to promote peace, stability and security. But most of the Gulf countries do not see India as a net security provider in these particular regions. The major reason is, one is our capability to handle the situations, and we have to balance their trilateral access over there. We are close to Iran, Saudi Arabia and also Israel. So if you take Saudi Arabia, obviously it is trying to be close to Pakistan, and then it opposes the Iran. So India wants to befriend both with Saudi Arabia and Iran. So these are the where a calculus of India has to be very strong, and a balancing act is going to be very tough for India. And coming to Afghanistan, thus in Afghanistan, India is focusing on goodwill diplomacy. So what is this goodwill diplomacy? We are building the Salma Dam, Zaranj-Delaram Highway. This Zaranj-Delaram Highway is supposed to connect with the Chabahar port. So it has to create an alternate route for Afghanistan, bypassing the Pakistan. So, and the next is, we also built their parliament. In spite of this, recently, in a quadrilateral group which was created, the quadrilateral cooperation group, coordination group. So there are the participants are China, US, Pakistan and Afghanistan. And the second thing is, the Pakistan don't want to lose its control over the Afghanistan. And the national unity government is existing in Afghanistan because no party got the majority. So both the parties came together and formed the national unity government. So Ashraf Ghani and Abdullah, if we observe, there's a everyday fight between these two people. So in this context, obviously the government is losing its credibility. It will be more occupied by the forces such as Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. So in these circumstances, so Pakistan is not ready to lose its influence. Haqqani network and then Al-Qaeda in Indian Peninsula, all these are going to play a significant role, and Pakistan has considerable strength in them. And another thing is, the Afghanistan and Ashraf Ghani is more inclined and is looking towards the Shanghai Cooperation Organization rather than looking towards India. So, and Ashraf Ghani also appears vacillated in deciding its relations with Pakistan. Initially, he even went to the Pakistan headquarters in Rawalpindi, but however, later, after the Murree talks have failed, he also became very much agitated against the Pakistan. So now, Pakistan's strategic interest lies in Afghanistan, and let us see how these things turn out. But one thing we can say is there is a very little to celebrate for India with the recent events happening around. Now coming to the new RBI governor, what are the 5 priority areas? Now in 2013, our currency was rapidly falling. Then we have invited for FCNR bonds. Now these bonds have got matured, we have to repay them. So there may be a tune of $20 billion which will be going out from India. So in this country, it's not a panic situation for India, as Raghuram Rajan said. But after the Brexit, the relative global currency will be reduced. The banks will not be in a position to give more than $10 billion for us. So in these circumstances of Brexit, this can be a cause for worry. And the second thing is Monetary Policy Committee. And there will be 6 members, 3 from government side, 3 from the RBI side, and RBI governor will have a casting vote. It is supposed to bring in more credibility to the monetary policy, which is now overtly focused against the RBI governor. So institutionalizing this system is the responsibility of the new RBI governor, managing the expectation. Now if you see, as RBI governor Raghuram Rajan has strongly stood for controlling the inflation, and so he has maintained for the high interest rates, that is one thing. And he strongly claimed that the interest rates are not the reason for the low credit growth, it is the NPAs of the banks. Once the Raghuram Rajan is leaving, so the expectations on the new governor to ease the interest rates and to facilitate the growth is high. But he doesn't appear that he has so much of leg room. Why? If you carefully observe, the inflation is on high normal. It has crossed 5.5%. And as inflation targeting is the objective of the monetary policy now, it has to be maintained below 6% this year. So in this case, balancing these new high expectations is the major challenge. Next, bank cleanup. You know that RBI governor has initiated the asset quality review. And many of the banks, as they have to provision for these bad loans, they have to declare the losses this year. So in these circumstances, banks are requesting RBI to go slow on these reforms, not to be too strict on these things. So that's what is another thing. And finally, RBI autonomy. And Duvuri Subbarao, what he said is this. So RBI shall appear at least autonomous. So in this, he has said that RBI sometimes comes under the pressure of Ministry of Finance, because Ministry of Finance is always interested in growth. RBI is interested in control of inflation. So in these circumstances, the Raghuram Rajan is totally independent in his office, and there also will be expectations that the new governor has to function independently from the office. Now, next article is Sunny Times for Solar. You know that Indian Solar Alliance was declared by the Prime Minister Modi during the Paris climate change talks. So in this context, recently World Bank Governor Dr. Kim, he has visited India and he has given his support and a partnership for $1 billion development of solar initiative in India. And he also said India will be a bright spot with regard to renewable energies. And we have a very strong target that we shall achieve 100 gigawatts of power of solar power by 2022, and renewables have to be increased to 175 gigawatts. So the major challenges for the solar power are development of the batteries to store this, and then providing for solar panels. Already you know that India has a domestic procurement clause which did not go well with the WTO when US filed the case, because based on this, it is violative of the WTO norms, and it was the decision has come against to India. Unless there is a robust solar panel development industry in India, the ambitious targets of 100 gigawatt by 2022 may not be possible. And then the intelligent grids, it means whenever the power is available. So first it has to accept the power from the renewables, then it has to go for the non-renewables. That is one thing. And how the weather tomorrow will be, based on that the grid shall be automatically able to plan how much it has to allocate for the renewable production. So these are the things, these intelligent grids need to be developed. Third is empowerment of the end producer. For every house you can fix in a meter where they can produce the electricity from the rooftop to solar panels, and they can provide it for contribute it for the grid. So it means an automatic system of this has to be developed. Finally, if you take the Germany's energy Wende model, so it has achieved 100% of electricity through renewables. That can be the possible model for India to work on this particular thing. Now coming to monsoon. So this June, the monsoon is less than predicted. Then what the weather people say is, the June was never reliable for monsoon predictions. So when we talk about the monsoons, we talk about the July and August. They say that there is very good chance the monsoon will be normal this year as El Nino is residing. That is one thing. And the major problem for the farmers is, it is along with the weak monsoons, the second thing is monsoon breaks. All of a sudden for 1 week the monsoon progression will be stopped. So, and there will be no rains. This situation is monsoon break. So that is what is the major problem which we are going to see in the July and August. And coming to US blamed for the Pak nuclear bomb. So there is a senator in US from South Dakota, Mr. Pressler. He has wrote his new autobiography, that is the Senator Pressler, an independent mission to save our democracy. So what he says is, when Zia-ul-Haq, he was moving forward with the nuclear ambitions, the America had a lot of opportunity to control this, and Congress has actually fought against this. But it was the Department of Defense which did not allow it to move forward. And the laxity of America is responsible for this particular action. Then Ronald Reagan, you know that, he was very much favorable to India. Recently a diplomat wrote a book in which he said Ronald Reagan even was ready to give the nuclear technology to India, and he wants India to go nuclear before China. So that's what is recent news. But however, be careful. The Ronald Reagan has encouraged Mr. Pressler to introduce a bill in 1961, that is Foreign Assistance Act, an amendment to the Foreign Assistance Act 1961 in 1988. And obviously Mr. Pressler is very close to Rajiv Gandhi. So these are the things we need to understand. And finally, in jobs. At the entry level of the jobs, the government salaries are very high. But when this experience matters, when skills matter, the private sector is paying more. So this is what is the 7th Pay Commission, and a study conducted by the IIM Ahmedabad, that is salary comparison study, tells us. These are the news for today. Thank you very much. All the best.